Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Wonderful day today. Let's give charity. Charity saves from death. Charity brings all the good things. Give charity. Here we go. Everyone should have a charity box in their house. The Rebbe said you should put charity boxes attached to the walls of your room so it becomes an integral part of your room to give charity. It's not just an additional thing. Here we go. Ready? Charity. And then I go usually every day to this synagogue and I give this charity away to the poor people there. They're not lacking. Okay, I mean the poor people are lacking money, but there's not lacking number of poor people. Okay, yes. Okay, yesterday we learned in Torah Or, which is the speeches and essays of the first Lubavitcher Rebbe Shneur Zalman. Here's a picture of it. Here, see? Picture Shneur Zalman. He was the first Rebbe of Chabad. He also wrote the book the Tanya. He also wrote Shulchan Aruch Harav. And here we're discussing a little bit the inner aspects of the Torah. That these are the things that Mashiach is going to reveal to everybody. And here we are. Here we are. You got Mashiach is revealing this to me and you. These are the teachings of the Mashiach. Okay. So we learned that there's a saying in the beginning, the giving of the Torah. This week is talking about the giving of the Torah. So it says a strange sentence that Moses spoke and God answered him. Moshe daber v'Hashem yanenu b'kol. So it says, first of all, the verbs don't seem to be right. It should have said that Moshe spoke and God answered him in the voice because it's telling about what happened on Mount Sinai. And it doesn't say that. It says Moses is speaking, Yidaber, and God is answering him. So just the summary. So what we learned up to now, it means that Moses spoke. The word for spoke, Yidaber, is the same word as to draw down, to lead. So Moses, he brought down the revelation of God into the world. And Elohim Yanenu, and that God answered him. This name of God, Elohim, is the name of the world, nature. And when Moses draws godliness into the world, so the world reflects that godliness back. It answers. Of course, we're talking about here not just the world, but people. So it's a very basic principle in Kabbalah. And that's why in the Zohar, there was a lot of times when they didn't like the language of the Zohar because it talks in a lot of terms in masculine and female, male and female, and the unification of God, who's the male aspect, with the female aspect, and what's kissing and what's hugging and what's this, all these different levels of unifications. And this, in fact, the book of Song of Songs, King Solomon, which was written way before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that wrote the Zohar, that was like 1,800 years ago, let's say. And King Solomon, that was like 1,500 years before that. So that was King Solomon was in the beginning of the first temple. I mean, he built the first temple, so that was way before. So, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that was like 200 years after the temple was destroyed, 100 years after the temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. So that was a long time afterwards. So already in the book of Song of Songs, it's already talking about this love, intimate love relationship between God and the Jewish people. And one of the things of a love relationship is that there's an interreaction. There's a reaction and a reaction to the reaction, etc. There's all these marriage counselors, that a lot of times the problem in marriage is that the husband doesn't pay attention to the wife, and the wife doesn't pay attention to the husband, and say a good word, and then the wife, she replies to her husband with a good word, with a good action, and a good word. So it has to be the sort of, how do you say, symbiotic relationship. That the good word, symbiotic, nice big word. In other words, one appreciates the other and receives from the other, and that's the relationship with us with God. And of course, there's always going to be people saying, well, that's just blasphemy. You can't talk about God in that terms. Well, tell that to King Solomon. Tell that to God when he spoke to Adam. When Adam did what God wanted, he was supposed to do, so God would have been pleased, like Noah pleased God. And Adam did the opposite. So we see that there's an interrelationship. So that's the idea of Moses. There has to be in every generation a human being that's like Moses. And that's what it means, Moses Yidaber. Here we go. There we go. Yeah. Okay, ready? So there has to be a Moses in every generation. And this Moses in every generation, for instance, in our generation, it's the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe, his thing is to make everybody realize that God is waiting for us to that God exists and that God is waiting for us, that God loves us and that God is waiting for us to to have this interrelationship between us and him. So Moses draws godliness down. That's what it means, Moses Yedaber. He puts the godliness in the Torah that you feel that the Torah is alive. The same God who's giving us the Torah he's giving us the Torah right now, and he's also creating us. that same God, he is interested that we should realize his greatness, and when so, then we respond to that, and then God responds to our response, etc. So that's what it means, Moshe Yedaber, that Moses draws down inspiration, godliness in the world, and Elohim Yanenu, Elohim means the world, answers him, it responds. And that's what it means constantly. That's what it says. The Inyan Yedaber, Yedaber means that he is speaking. Moses is doing it. Not just he did it. It's not just the story that's telling about the giving of the Torah. It's a thing that began when God gave the Torah. There was a Moses that drew godliness down into the Torah. That's what it means. The Inyan Yedaber, Va'anenu, that's what it means. Moses speaks and he answers. That's Hove, it's constant, right now. Nine Espeshtusa the Moshe, there is a branch of Moses in every single generation. There is a, how do you say, Espetusha, a branch, what's it called? There's a word for it, a replacement. You want to call that? A replacement for Moses in every generation. And this is the level of a bittul. This is the idea that it is possible to surrender ourselves totally to the truth that there is in each person. Every person also has a little bit of a Moses inside of him. Everybody that is able to surrender himself to his creator according to what he can, according to how do you say, his personality in his heart, in doing the Torah and the commandments, in batel ritzoncha, in surrendering your will to God. So what's the Rebbe saying? This is not just a theoretical idea, a theoretical book. It's talking like, science fiction or religious fiction or something like that. This is for every single person. And it's not just for tzaddikim, and it's just for for holy people, or telling you, what level Moses was. And then, so we can, admire this from afar, or we can be excited and impressed by it. The Rebbe's it's a workbook. The Rebbe's trying to tell us what we're supposed to be right now, and what we're supposed to be, and what we can be if we want to. And he's saying that there's a Moses, and there's a Moses inside of each and every one of us. That's what the rabbis say. This is what we got up to. That's what the rabbis say. Call a Korah Vashona, a person who learns Torah and repeats what he learns. A Kodesh Baruch Hu Korah Vashona Kenegdo. That God responds and he learns and repeats the Torah opposite that person. Because you cause God to react to what you do. Lo kol shavim, not everyone is equal. Achat in one way. That it's the same thing. When I read the Torah, it's the same thing as when Lubavitcher Rebbe reads the Torah. It's the same thing. Each person according to his ability, according to his nature. The Bechin is bittul in his surrender to Orein Sof Baruch Hu, in his surrender to God. Now, this could mean that there's a person who's a tremendous Talmud scholar, and he knows the whole entire Talmud because he has a good mind. just has a good mind. There's people who know Shakespeare by heart. There's people who know the law books by heart, right? They went to Harvard or something like that, and they can just quote you any law from any place. They know the laws by heart. It's not, they could do the same thing what they were put in China. They could do certain things. It's not relevant to their personal life. It's relevant to their job. They're good lawyers, right? There's doctors for sure that they know all the names of all the medicines and all the diseases and all the different parts of the body and everything. They know everything. But it's relevant to their job. When they go home, that's not relevant to them. Here we're talking about a person's attitude toward life, toward reality. What's most important thing? Is the most important thing God, or is the most important thing me? Even to the degree that, I'm going to learn Torah, so I'm going to go to heaven. So if so, he's not really surrendered to God. He's not surrendered to God. He's just making it's a good investment for him. But the main thing is himself. He wants the profits. He wants the profits. And if it could be that it's not worthwhile investment, or he thinks it's not going to, so stop. That's why, like when communism came in to Russia, so millions of Jews, just left their Judaism. In Germany and these places where all of a sudden it just didn't pay to be a Jew, just didn't pay to be religious. So they just dropped the whole thing. They jettisoned, right? Like in a rocket, they just jettisoned the lower stages of the rocket. So they just let the thing out. So the question is, where is the person really? It could be the person that just knows how to read, one line in the Torah. He's more devoted to the God than the person who's the tremendous Talmud scholar, but he's devoted to himself. The simple person, if you tell him, I'll give you $1 million if you say that God doesn't exist, he'll say, I'm not going to do it. I'd rather die than say that to bow down to the church or something like that. I'd rather die. And the guy who has $1 million, he can think, listen, in certain cases, maybe it's okay. I can find the things, I need the money from my synagogue and from my yeshiva, and it's not really bowing down, and I'll just do this and that. So that's the idea of bittul. Bittul means what's really the most important thing to you in your life. Now, most people love themselves in a way which is they themselves don't even know how much they love themselves until somebody cuts them off on the street, or they think somebody's doing something to them, or they see they receive a bribe, something like that. Suddenly they realize they're twisting everything around. So that's the idea of bittul to Hashem. A person who is really realizes God creates me and he really feels it in his heart. That's the level in od milvado. There's nothing except for him. Hani Hashem lo shenisi, and I am God, I never changed. That I created you doesn't mean that there's two separate things. There's me and you. God still is one. Who feels this? Well, that's what Moses is supposed to draw, and the Moses of every generation is supposed to draw into us when we learn the Torah. So just like God filled everything olamas of this world before he created the world, kachu mamish, it's so it is right now after the world was created. You can say, how could it be? I exist and I feel that I exist and I'm certain that I exist. There's no doubt that I exist. And the Rebbe also knows that I exist. He's writing a book for me. God gave me a Torah. It says in the Torah, there's Bnei Yisrael. So we really exist. How can it possibly be? He says, yeah, you exist because God is creating you. Do you feel this? I can explain it. I can, talk about it. It's a nice idea. Interesting. It's an interesting idea. But to really feel it, that's the job of Moses, to make it really, you really feel it in your heart. And that's the Moses in every Jew, to really feel that the Torah is coming from our Creator. And in a way, it's more important. The Torah, doing what is the Torah, is more important than doing what I want. For me, the hu bechina is Moshe. That's the level of Moses. Nachnu ma, like Moses said, we are ma. We are total surrender to the truth. And that's why it says by Moses, Shechina medaberes b'toch grono shel Moshe, that the Shechina, God's presence, was speaking through the throat of Moses. Moses was so devoted to God that the words just came through his mouth. Just came through his mouth. This, it's a little bit hard to believe this thing, because everybody can say, well, I'm also speaking the words of the Lord. There's all sorts of people that make claims. I'm speaking the word of God. And everything I say is always right. And everything that's but the way that we see that Moses was different, one of the ways we see that Moses was totally different, was that Moses was willing to lose everything for the sake of the Jewish people. When God said, when the Jewish people worshiped the golden calf, and God said, I can't deal with the Jews, I'll make a new nation from you. And Moses said, no, if you're not gonna let me pray for the Jewish people as they are, then you can wipe me out also. And God said, listen, Moses, maybe you didn't understand the offer I'm making. I'm not going to wipe out the Jewish people. I'm going to wipe out these people who were sinners. And from you, I'm going to make a new nation. They're going to have your DNA. They're going to be just like you. And Moses said, no, God, maybe you didn't understand what I said. I want to be wiped out. These Jewish people, the way they are, sinners, whatever it is, that's my people. And that's your people. That's your people. And God said, well, that's what I wanted to hear. That's what I want to hear. I don't care anything about myself. Moses said, wipe me out from the Bible. Instead of Moses, a new Bible. Hashem El Stanley, right? God spoke this, pick somebody else. It wouldn't be Moses anymore. Moses was really serious, and God knew he was serious. He didn't care anything about himself. All he cared about was the Jewish people, whatever state that they're in. I'll take care of them. I'll elevate them. I'll have problems from them. But that's the people. That's what we're working with. The King Bakal Dor. So it is in every generation. Kamosha Omar Magid, like the Magid said to Beit Yosef. Aniya Mishnah Medaberet Bepicha. The Beit Yosef was Rabbi Yosef Cairo. He lived about 450 years ago. He wrote an amazing book, which all of Judaism goes according to. It's called the Shulchan Aruch, the set table, and it's all the laws that are practical nowadays. All the laws that are practical nowadays, day-to-day laws that are practical now. Shulchan Aruch. Also laws of marriage, laws that are damages. He wrote the amazing Shulchan Aruch. And the Beit Yosef Cairo, he had an angel that used to speak to him. He used to speak to him. An angel would speak to him, and he would ask you advice. He would talk to him. And he would give him all sorts of insights. And he said, "I am Mishnah." The angel says, "I am the Mishnah. I am the Torah which is speaking through your mouth." The representative of God. So he was totally surrendered to the truth. And therefore, Nikra Talmid Chacham. That's why a Torah scholar is called a Talmid Chacham. A Talmid Chacham. He's called that he learns from Chachma. Chachma is this level, pure truth, pure essence of God. And every Talmid Chacham, they're all called Moses. Like it says in the Gemara, Moshe, Shapir Amarta. When any time that one of the Tanaim on the Amoraim would say something that was really beautiful, and the others would say to him, Moses, you spoke beautiful. They would call him Moses. They would call him Moshe. Why? Because a person who's a Talmid Chachma means he learns from Chachma. Chachma, that's this level of Koach Ma. Koach Ma, we said the power of surrender to God. Abba, you said Brata. It says that Abba, that's the level of Chachma, and that's what is found where in the lowest level, Brata, that's the daughter, that's the Jewish people. Like it says, Hashem, B'Chachma Yisod Oretz. That's the dover, that's the word of God, which is law, in the mouth of the Talmid Chacham. So when the Torah scholars, which that can be everybody, it's supposed to be, when they say words of Torah, and they say words of Torah knowing this is the word of God, then it's a revelation of God's Chachma. Chachma is this power of total surrender to the truth. That's what it means. B'kolo shel Moshe, Hashem yanenu b'kol. It says that Moses spoke, means he drew down this inspiration, this feeling of godliness into the world, especially into the Torah. And then it says that God, Elohim, answered in the voice of Moshe. That the world responded, the Jewish people responded. That's God answered. Elohim, this name of God, which is Elohim. This is the world. It answered the voice of Moshe. Moses drew down kol, a voice. This is drawing down from what's concealed to what's drawing down from what is revealed. I'm sorry. This is what drawing down from what is concealed. Me'ahelim, from what's revealed. Elagilei, to be revealed. So God is concealed. You don't feel God. You open up the Torah, it's just like a book, like any other book in the world. The Torah. It says because God is hidden there. It's hidden. Therefore, you have to respond to the work of Moses, what Moses is doing. He's drawing godliness down into the Torah, the truth. The fact that Torah is the word of God. And when you say those words, you're saying the words of God. It draws down from what's concealed, the godliness concealed in the Torah to be revealed. That's why it says when Mashiach comes, it's going to be a new Torah. It's not going to be new. There's not going to be any new laws, or some laws are going to be done away with or whatever. Exactly the opposite. The laws will feel the godliness in every law, will feel the godliness in every word. Just like Hevel Leib, like the voice, which a voice, it says, is the wind that comes from the heart to the throat. Al derech mashal, like it says, kanora mashakatuv ala pasuk kana chachma, kana, it says kana chachma. If you can purchase wisdom, but the kana is also the windpipe. According to the level of how much you are surrendered to God, so also Elokim Yanenu, so to that level you'll be inspired, you'll be activated. Lios Kora Vishona Konegdo, then then the world will be aroused to call out to God, and God will answer opposite us, and there's an interrelationship which there's no end to. So what's the point that the Rebbe wants to make? The point the Rebbe wants to make is that the Torah comes from the essence of God, and it's in this world, right here in the world. You can buy it, put it in your house. Every house should have, right? 5 books of Moses. When you read those words, especially a Jew, when a Jew reads those words, because it's a commandment for the Jews to read. When a Jew reads those words, then there's an elevation of the Jew. The Jew gets elevated. Why? Because in those words is godliness that Moses put there. And that inspires us to elevate ourselves to God, and then God reacts to that, etc. Okay, what's the Rebbe talking about? The Rebbe is talking about things that are hidden. So it could be that what we're reading now, so you think, okay, the Rebbe maybe knows this stuff, but I don't really understand what he's talking about. I don't experience any of this. And the Rebbe is saying, of course you don't experience, because it's hidden. But it doesn't have to be hidden. It's a fact, actual fact, and it's a thing that you can sense, especially if you're looking for it. The Rebbe wants to sensitize us to the fact of what's really happening when we're learning the Torah. It's a thing that's so very unusual that it's hard to really believe it's happening, and harder to sense that it's happening, but it certainly is possible. And not only is it possible, it's necessary. And not only is it possible and it's necessary, but it's available to us. It's available to us. This feeling of what a Jew is, and eventually the whole world will be filled with this. Everyone will feel, it says, all the secrets of the Torah will be revealed in day-to-day life. Excuse me. Explanation. BRLP, let's an explanation according to what it says, that Moses is speaking, and the world answers him. The emios, that even though the Kayam Avram, this is sort of like a summary, but it's also explaining what we learned. Even though that it's true that Abraham did all the Torah before it was given. Well, you know what? I think I didn't want to do this. I'll do it up to here. Let's go. Even though that Abraham did all the Torah before it was given, the main thing that Abraham did was he revealed godliness in the upper worlds, Lamaila. But Moses, Yedaber, Moses, he led, he drew down, V'yamshich, and he drew down that this would be revealed, godliness would be revealed below in this world, even in just doing simple acts. Doing the Torah, doing the commandments. So we have to understand what is the Indian, what does it mean that Abraham drew down by means of the commandments above, in the upper worlds? So what are these upper worlds that Abraham affected? When he drew the mitzvahs as he understood them, as he was before the giving of the Torah. We said Abraham did all the commandments before giving the Torah, and he also drew down godliness, but he only drew it in the upper worlds. What does that mean? Who is Ki Ramach Mitzvah, the 248 commandments, the 48 positive commandments. They're called 248 limbs of the king. In other words, God existed, of course, before the world existed. And God had the Torah was, if you want to call it within God, that was the body of God, the Torah, before the world. So that's what we call the 248 limbs of Zeir Anpin. Zeir Anpin is God's emotions. Okay, now it gets a little bit complicated. Zeir Anpin, God's emotions, there's usually 7 of them, 7 emotions. But in another way, it's not 7 emotions. The real Zeir Anpin is usually 6 emotions, because Malchut, the lowest, is not considered to be 1. On the other hand, Zeir Anpin is affected and led by the 3 intellects. So it comes out that Zeir Anpin is really 9 sfirot. 9 sfirot. It's 9. It's Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. That's 6. And Chachma Bina V'dat, which keeps them alive. That's the life of them. So it's really, there's 9. So 9 times 9 is 81. And each 81. And each one of these 81 aspects of Zeir Anpin, because Zeir Anpin is also called doubles. They're called doubles because they can be for good and for bad. So therefore there's 9 emotions here. 9 times 9. One second. Again, I'm sorry. Zeir Anpin is 9 sfirot. 9 times 9 is 81. Why? Because each one of these 9 aspects, forget what I said about good and bad. That's true, but that's not relevant here. Each one of these 9 aspects, each one also contains 9. So if so, it comes out that God's emotions are really 81. The 6 aspects of God's emotions filled with the 3 intellect, that makes 9. And each one of these 9 also contains 9. Each one of the 9 emotions with their intellect also has emotions and intellect to it. So that makes altogether 81. And all this 81, there's 3. There's what's called Rosh Tochen Sof. Where is this? Here it is. Bechinas Gimel Kelim has 3 vessels. 3 vessels. Middle, 3 inner vessels. There's what's called Satam, Sof, Toch, Rosh. The 3 vessels are called end, middle, and beginning. Okay, so if you take 81, and this is the emotions of God, the 81 emotions of God, because the emotions are 9, right? 6 emotions led by the 3 intellects. That's 9. Each one of those 9 is contained with 9, so it comes out to be 81. And these 81 also, there's what's called the top of them, the middle of them, and the end of them. So take 81 and multiply it by 3. So 3 Gimel Pamim Pei Aleph. This is Ramag 243. And there's what's called the 5 Chasadim, the 5 aspects of God's love and kindness that makes them grow, emotions grow. So that comes out the Ramach. So what's this talking about? These are the 248 limbs of God. That's the 200 corresponding to the 248 positive commandments. That's the source of the 248 positive commandments. And to draw this down, and to draw this down, I'm sorry, I lost the place. This is 248. 240. Okay, but to draw these down, to draw this down, into the world. So what did we just explain? We explained these are the 248 limbs of God. In other words, the 248 emotional aspects of God, 200 aspects, 248 aspects of God, right and left, right and left, right. These are, in order to make them, so we have to have to draw this down, that it should be growing of these emotions, etc., to be 9 times 9. This is by means of Ibur, Yonika, and Mochim. There's 3 levels of the development of everything, and even if these emotions, there are how they're hidden, how they're born, and how they mature. Ibur, this is 3 inside of 3. A baby is 3 inside of 3. The brains, a baby, the fetus, the brains are inside of the what's called the legs, the legs. So the brains, that's Chachma Bina Das, and all there is just the legs, which is, which that's Netzach Hod and Yesod. So it ends up that's only 9. That's a baby is his head, which is Chachma Bina Dat, is inside of the 3 aspects. Those 3 aspects are inside of each one of the Netzach Hod Yesod. That's the legs. So that's 9. Afterwards, when the child is born, like emotions are born, then it gets bigger in the level of Vav Katzavos. Then there's already 6. And each one has 6. That's called 36. That's the 36. That's the emotions just as they're being revealed. That's what it means when God says Mi Bora Eila, that God creates the heavens. This is the level of Bina, and it creates the 36. That's the birth. When the emotions are born, that it's not 3 intellect inside of the legs, but it's 6 full emotions, and each one contains 6. That's 36. That's how God creates the heavens. And even though that when the child is born, he also has intellect. So why don't we count the 3 aspects of intellect? Because it's childish. Okay, but when the Torah is given, we're going to see. This is called Vav Katzavos. The Mochin, this is the level of the emotions. This is like intellect of that emotion that he loves because of some reasons, etc., etc. Yeah, therefore, in the emotions, it's only called Vav Katzavos. It's only called 6. But afterwards, when the Torah is given, right? So this is like the world before it's created. Then it's only, so to speak, 9 emotions of God, 3 inside of 3. When the world is created, just in the beginning, then it's like 6. The emotions are they come out to be revealed. So then all the 6 emotions are revealed. And each one is contained in 6. That's 36. And afterwards, when God gives the Torah, then that's Mochin, when the intellect comes into the world. So then it comes that 9 into 9, that's Chabad, and they become born. That's what the 248 limbs that Abraham did. That's the commandments that Abraham did. Namely, that he drew godliness into Zeir Anpin, into God's emotions. Okay, so what have we just explained? We have explained that Abraham did all the commandments, but he did the commandments in a spiritual way. So that the spirituality, everything was in a spiritual way. So we explained that in the spiritual worlds, there's also 248. Abraham was able to, in the spiritual world, so Abraham was able to activate the spiritual worlds and draw Torah into the spiritual worlds, right? We said that the spiritual worlds is there, that's only 36. But Abraham, by means of doing the Torah, he drew down intellect into these 36. So it means not 6 times 6, but 9 times 9. In other words, we drew 3 intellects into the 6 emotions, so they become 9, and each one of them is included in 9. So it comes out to be 243, and with the 5 aspects of God's kindness, it grew up to be 248. So that's Abraham revealed the 248 commandments as they are in the upper worlds. That's why Abraham was called Aver Ma. He was a limb of God, Aver of Ma, but as it is totally surrendered to God in the upper worlds. Excuse me. So that's the thing of Abraham, that he realized, he was aware that there was such a thing as God, his intellect. So he drew intellect into the nascent, whatever you call it, emotions of God, to make them full, the full emotions of God. That's the 248 commandments, the 248 limbs of God. Okay, but that was in the upper worlds. Aval, but we're skipping a little bit. Aval, but Kadeh, in order that it should be drawn down, not just in the upper world. Here, the upper world truly is the upper world. That's what's called Atzilut. In order that it should be drawn down into the physical world, Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, mainly this physical world, Asiya, this is by means of Moses. That Moses had a higher level than Abraham. Moses was from this level of Chachmas Timoah, the hidden aspect of God's wisdom in the crown of God. The crown of God, one of the names of the crown of God is called Erech Anpin. But it came down into Yesod Abba and into this aspect of Moses' wisdom, and came down there to be Gavua v'yashpil yoter lamata, so that it could be, because it's so high, it was able to come down below. Moses was so high, therefore he had a greater power than Abraham, and he could actually bring the Torah down, not just in the spiritual worlds like Abraham did, that brought Chachma Bin Adad into the 6 emotions so that it became 9 and 9 times 9 in the upper worlds, but Moses actually drew it down into this physical world. Like it says in Idra Rabbah. Idra Rabbah is part of the Zohar. And the 3 worlds that came out from, etc., etc. Okay, that at the beginning it was 3 worlds of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. They were drawn down from the 13 attributes of mercy, of Erech Anpin, of God's crown. And that's the Palia, very wondrous. How could it be such a big jump from such a high level that Moses was? That Moses was like this level of the 13 attributes of God's mercy. It says God's beard of Erech Anpin. How could it come down so low to be into the low, the physical worlds? How could it? Moses was so high. How could he come down so low? He says that exactly the opposite. Adarabba, exactly the opposite. In order that the light of God could come down so low that it can come down into physical, actual commandments in this physical, actual world for physical, actual, normal people like me and you, at least like me. And I suppose you're also the same as I am. Abraham was a tremendous genius, tzaddik, totally surrendered to God. But what about people like us that were not geniuses and tzaddiks and totally surrendered to God? What about us? So that's Moses. Moses brought down the Torah to us. But how could it be? Moses was even higher than Abraham. How could he come down so low? He says exactly the opposite. Because he was so high, he was able to come down so low. In order to have godliness revealed in such a low place like here, it has to come from a tremendously high place. Because Moses was so tremendously high, he could bring himself down lower. His habos olamos, in order that there could be the creation of the worlds. This is by means of what's called the first tikkun of Yud, of the 13 attributes of mercy. This is what's called Mi Kel Kamocha. Who is a God like you? So it comes down to that this world is tremendously important to God because God gave the commandments in this world, but it comes from a tremendously high source, this world. Now, a high source means that it's above being called high. I mean, one example is given. I keep bringing this up, but I'll bring it up again. Albert Einstein, he was a big genius, Albert Einstein, right? But he also had the ability to bring his wisdom down in a very, very simple way, that he could explain it to a child. He said one time that if you have an idea that can't be explained to whatever it is, to a school child or a simple man, then you haven't got the idea proper. It has to reveal in a way that everybody can understand when it's practical. It has to be practical. So not all the scientists and the physicists that he worked with, who were tremendous geniuses, were able to do this. It was a special talent. And this special talent to take these deep ideas and bring it down, that comes from a different level. It comes from a level that's in a way even above the wisdom to bring it down. So it's the same thing with Moses, the Havdil. I mean, I don't know if you're supposed to say it, to bring the essence of God into the world, into the Torah, it had to be a tremendous level. And in order to draw itself down so low. Similarly, we can also understand in this drawing down what we do now when we do Torah and the commandments in the worlds. that this was by means of Moses. Moses, because Moses was such a tremendously high place, he was drawn from the water. Remember, we learned he was drawn from before this whole world, from the world of Tohu, it said. From the Shorish Bechinas Abraham. So Moses, because he was higher than the level of Abraham, so he was able, he had the special gift that he could total surrender to God in a deeper way than Abraham did, that he was able to bring the Torah down into this world. Therefore, he was able to draw this light of the Torah down in the lowest places, which is not the case. Abraham, it only remained what called Atzilut in the spiritual world. Excuse me. That's what it means. Kikeil Deus Hashem. Remember we said before that God is a God of realities, realizations. Keil Deot. In other words, God wants us to think that we're separate. He wants us to think that we are separate and that God is bigger than us. The true awareness is that we're nothing. That's the upper awareness. The upper awareness is that we're just amazing miracles. It makes no logic sense why we exist, why we keep existing. It's just an amazing miracle that God is creating us all the time, but God feels this, so to speak. God knows that's the obvious truth. That's what's called the upper dea, the upper reality. But God is a God of deot, of upper and lower reality. He wants us to feel that we're separate. He created us in his image, so we'll feel that we're God also. And the goal of the whole thing is that we'll realize that the way we look at the world is because God created it that way, but it's not the whole picture. The whole picture is that really we're just miraculous creations of God constantly, every moment. The whole world is. So these two feelings, these two realities, that's what's called the upper unity of God and the lower unity of God. The upper unity of God is that from above to below, everything in front of God is nothing. And what's above, the higher, what that's above, that's true existence. That's yesh. The lower reality is, the lower unity is exactly the opposite. Namely, we feel that we are real and that God is less real. Who says there's even God at all? We're doing God a big favor if we believe in him. That we believe that below, this is what's true. This is what's real. Ub'shem zeh, shem el, hu b'chinas tikun arishon. And this name of God, which is the name El, is of the first of the 13 attributes of mercy. The 13 attributes of mercy were revealed to Moses, it says, on Mount Sinai, after the Jewish people sinned with the golden calf. God said, I'll put you in a cleft of a rock, and I'll pass in front of you, and that called out the 13 attributes of mercy. The first of them is El. We don't say El, we say Kale. And that's what, if we remember, we said that was the name Yisra El, that in the Jewish people rules this name El, which is the beginning of the 13 attributes of mercy. That's the essence of God, which includes the whole entire creation. In that is the two realities. The reality from God's point of view and reality from our point of view. That's what it says, that God creates together their hearts. Hamevin el kol ma'aseim. That's what it means, that God creates our hearts and he tests our, what is called our conscience, klayot, are like the kidneys, but it means our conscience. So in other words, God knows that he put it in the world that way. He made a world where people want to kill and they want to steal, and therefore the 10 Commandments say, don't do it. Right? Because that's a test. It's a how do you say, a challenge. God created us in this way, and that's the way he well, that's part of the fiber of creation. There's a thing called an opposition, and there's a victory over the opposition. Even by God, it's that way. That, so to speak, the Jewish people are called the soldiers of God. Remember, we learned that in the Maimer, Sivot Hashem, that God created the world, that there's a challenge, and this challenge is so real that God created it. That's the reason he created the world, was for this challenge. That's why the first of the 10 Commandments, I am God who took you out of Egypt. And God creates Egypt. What's the big thing that God took us out of Egypt? He's creating the whole thing. But the an amazing mystery, but the concealment of God is some way deeper than the revelation of God. The ability for God to conceal himself. And from the source of this concealment, that's what's called the treasure house of God that he opens up in order that we should win this battle. So Moses he drew down the power that could be revealed in this world, that really our point of view and God's point of view are both creations of God, that we can see the world from our point of view, we can see the world from God's point of view. That there shouldn't be concealed this in the lower unity of God from below, from the level of the revelation of the upper unity of God. That the revelation should be below like it is above. This is something like the idea of the raising of the dead. What does it mean, raising of the dead? It means people who died, that were dead, that suddenly that they'll be alive. But if they become alive, so they're people. People die. Don't they die? I mean, people are limited, right? In the raising of the dead, there's going to be me, and there's going to be my next door neighbor, and there's going to be my grandparents and the great grandparents. Everybody's going to be separate. So if there's a limit to people, everyone is separate. So there's a limit to life, isn't there? And there's a limit to our understanding, isn't there? So that's the lower unity order. Again, this is right. There will be a world and there will be a lower unity, but somehow in that unity will be revealed life. The dead will be alive. They'll be dead and they'll be alive. There'll be people and they won't be dead, but they won't, right? There won't be any death, but there'll be people. There'll be limitations, and limitations will be unlimited. How is this going to be? Impossible to understand. The only example that's given is the ark that was in the Holy Temple. It says the ark that was in the Holy Temple could not be measured. They would lower people down. Workers would be lowered so that their feet wouldn't touch the ground in order to clean out in the Holy of Holies. They would clean the place out, and the ark was in the middle. And when they measured from one end of the ark to the walls, they'd see that it wasn't there. From one end of the ark to the wall was, let's say, 10 amas, and from the other end of the ark to the wall was 10 amas, and the whole room was only 20 amas. So it was like the ark didn't take up any place, but there it was. It had to be a certain. So it's the same thing is going to be with it'll be ultimate true reality. Why God is creating the world. The world will be here, but we'll see that in reality, its existence totally depends on God. That's what it means that God answered him. What does it mean, Elohim, which is this world? This is the level of concealment. Will be seen below in this world. That the world appears to be separate. This is the level of the lower unity. That's Elohim. It will answer Lamata just like it is in the voice of Moses from above. And then when we learn the Torah, we'll really feel the godliness which is in every word of the Torah. When we do the commandments, we'll feel the godliness which is in the commandments. It won't be like we're doing the commandments. It'll be that God is doing the commandments, but he's doing it through us. How it's going to be, I don't know. But that's what it says. There's going to be a new Torah and a new world. And this all began in a big way when God gave the Torah at Mount Sinai. Okay, now let's do the Devar Malchut.